If you want to see how power protects itself, study the Jeffrey Epstein case. The FBI and the Justice Department had warnings, files, and evidence across 3 decades. Instead of accountability, we got a sweetheart deal, sealed documents, raids that skipped key locations, and politicians who turned transparency into a prop. By 2025, Donald Trump's DOJ wasn't exposing anything. It was stage managing the FBI. Today, we're telling this as a straight, chronological story. Who first sounded the alarm, what the FBI did, what it didn't, and how those choices add up to something that, to a lot of people, looks an awful lot like a cover-up. The first complaint and the ignored warnings, 1996 to 2005. Our story really begins in March of 2005. A 14-year-old told her parents she'd been abused at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. Her mother went to police. Detectives opened a case and the pattern surfaced fast. Girls recruited under the promise of massage work, cash payments, pressure to bring in other teens, and a running list of names. By the time investigators were done, it looked like less a rumor and more like a conveyor belt. This wasn't just a case of he said, she said. After detectives ran controlled calls and corroborated accounts, they did a classic trash pull outside of the mansion and recovered appointment notes and phone numbers that matched what the girls had described. Plus, pink to-from message pads with first names. That's the kind of corroboration juries understand. Not rumor, paper. But 2005 wasn't the first warning. Nearly a decade earlier, in 1996, survivor Maria Farmer says she reported Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to the FBI and urged agents to look at other powerful men in their circle. Nothing came of it. And in the early 2000s, the money itself was waving a red flag. JP Morgan filed dozens of suspicious activity and cash transaction reports tied to Epstein before 2006. The bank later said law enforcement never contacted them about those alerts until years later. So by the mid-2000s, you had survivor testimony, banking smoke, and now a live local investigation. In 2006, the FBI opened its own case and started interviewing victims and witnesses. 50-plus interviews between 2006 and 2008. The Bureau wasn't in the dark. It was building a file, which makes what happened next even harder to swallow. 2006 to 2008, the sweetheart deal. This is where the story takes a pretty sharp left away from justice. Palm Beach detectives wanted felony charges. The county state attorney slow-rolled it. A grand jury returned only a solicitation count. Palm Beach PD Chief Michael Rater took the rare step of asking the feds for help. Translation: the locals knew the local path was being sandbagged. That's when the case shifted federal into the hands of U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta. On paper, this should have been the moment for a clean federal sex trafficking indictment. Instead, negotiations went subterranean. Epstein's defense table was a who's who. Alan Dershowitz, Ken Starr, Jay Lefkowitz, and more. They pushed Acosta's office relentlessly, and the talks drifted up the chain, all the way to Acosta himself and, according to multiple accounts, to Maine Justice in Washington. Meanwhile, line prosecutors in Miami drafted memos supporting federal charges. Those memos lost to the backroom compromise. What came out the other side of this was a non-prosecution agreement, the NPA. In plain English, Epstein would plead guilty to minor state charges only. He'd serve 13 months in county jail with work release 6 days a week. The federal case would vanish. And the craziest part, immunity would extend to any potential co-conspirators. Victims were not told the deal was being finalized until it was too late to object. That's not leniency, that's architecture. It didn't just spare Epstein, it wrapped a legal blanket around any other names. Prosecutors even drafted a federal indictment, then shelved it. The courtroom lights never came on. Years later, Alexander Acosta would allegedly tell people he'd been told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. That single line has haunted the entire investigation since. Is it a convenient myth, a half-truth, or the blunt explanation of why a federal sex trafficking case evaporated? I mean, pick your poison, but the result is the same. The Department of Justice's own watchdog eventually reviewed Acosta's handling and concluded that he showed poor judgment and that victims were not treated with the forthrightness and sensitivity that the department expects. So, translation, the government sold them out. Oh, and Alexander Acosta, by the way, he didn't get sidelined. In 2017, Donald Trump nominated him as Secretary of Labor, the cabinet official charged with protecting workers from exploitation, including trafficking. The man who signed off on Epstein's shield got a promotion. Oh, and about that work release, it was so generous. It felt like a piss take. Epstein left the county facility most days, spent long stretches in office suites, and had unusually lax supervision for a registered sex offender. Imagine any other defendant in a trafficking probe getting that treatment, right? Like, oh yes, you're guilty of those things. Please very kindly exit the prison and go to your mansion and hang out with Ghislaine and do it more. 2009 to 2015, the rights fight and who actually got punished. After the deal, survivors and their lawyers turned to the Crime Victims' Rights Act. They argued prosecutors had misled them, with letters implying a live federal case while the NPA was actually already locked in. The litigation crept forward for years. In 2019, Judge Kenneth Mara ruled that the government violated victims' rights by secretly resolving this case. Moral clarity without matching consequences. Meanwhile, who went to prison? Not the decision makers. Epstein's longtime house manager, Alfredo Rodriguez, was prosecuted for obstruction after he tried to sell Epstein's black book to investigators. He served 18 months, and from what I can see, he didn't get a lot of daily work release. The book, names, numbers, coded notes, oozed into civil suits and reporting. Rodriguez did time. Acosta did a swearing-in ceremony. 2019, arrest, raids, and what the agents took, room by room. In July 2019, the Southern District of New York indicted Epstein. The FBI moved fast, and for once, in full view. The Manhattan townhouse raid looked like a guided tour of a leverage machine. Also, it was just crazy in there. You should watch my video on it. Anyway, here's what they found. The basement safe, bundles of cash, loose diamonds, and multiple passports, including one listing a foreign address. Not exactly the I'll be there to face trial sort of energy. Office and library, filing cabinets, ledgers, correspondence, written phone lists, paper trails of who, when, and how often. In the bedrooms, massage tables and framed photographs of very young-looking women, plus stacks of CDs. Storage room, rows of discs labeled with cryptic notes. Think young-looking catering. Electronics everywhere. Desktop towers, laptops, external hard drives. In other words, Epstein didn't just live large, he archived. The house itself read like a catalogue of relationships and routines. The search warrant return reportedly ran for pages, an inventory that read like a floor plan. Safe, desk, nightstand, closet, server rack. For digital forensics, that matters. Each location suggests a different stream of data and a different potential timeline. Then agents went on to Little St. James. FBI and NYPD personnel ferried boxes out of villas and outbuildings, and drones were there catching it all. Whatever the public would be allowed to see later, the message in that moment was simple. We are finally going through everything. And yet, one place stayed quiet, Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. Survivors had tied abuse to the property. Neighbors remembered odd traffic patterns. Visitors were documented. But there was never a comparable, fully disclosed federal search there. Manhattan and the island turned into headline theater, but the 7,500-acre ranch remained conspicuously off-stage. The evidence that went missing, or almost did. If this were fiction, this is the part you'd call, a little too on the nose. Palm Beach, 2006. Before police could execute a full search of Epstein's Florida home, key computer equipment was allegedly removed. Detectives later said they believed word of the warrant had reached Epstein's team in time to spirit items away. I mean, it could be a coincidence. The effect was the same. Potential digital evidence was gone. MCC surveillance video, 2019. After Epstein's first reported suicide attempt in July, jail officers initially said the camera footage from the tear had been lost due to a technical error and a preservation mix-up. Weeks later, prosecutors told a judge the backup copy had been found. Then, on the night of Epstein's death in August, at least 2 cameras outside the cell reportedly malfunctioned, producing footage that was unusable or corrupted, and there was the missing stuff, and now it's out, but you can see we're seized media gaps. Even after the 2019 raids, lawyers and reporters encountered chain of custody questions. Labeled CDs referenced in affidavits that didn't match later inventories. Drives logged without publicly released hashes. Photographs circulating in civil discovery that didn't appear in Freedom of Information Act related sets. None of this proves grand conspiracy, but stacked next to each other, I don't know, I guess it's just like a really bad look. The FBI's vault, what they kept, and why that matters. After the 2019 seizures, the Bureau sat atop a mountain of paper and media. When survivors and journalists sought disclosure, the FBI produced a Vaughan Index, which is a formal list of what they were withholding. The categories alone tell a story. Confidential source files, handwritten agent notes, grand jury subpoenas, correspondence with foreign governments, bank records, photographs, even communication with the people who negotiated the 2008 deal. One particular detail landed with a thud. The Bureau couldn't provide a standard case closing memorandum. Technically, that meant the matter was still open. In practice, it meant the Bureau could cite ongoing investigation to avoid releasing more. If you're generous, that's cautious case management. If you're not, it looks like a vault. Looks like they just got a vault of stuff. Add the Freedom of Information Act into the mix. Lawyers received estimated completion dates stretching into late 2027. For survivors who have waited most of their adult lives, we appreciate your patience. Reads like check back in when it's politically safer. And the Vaughan Index wasn't just, we can't show you this. It was a map of everything the FBI thinks the public shouldn't see. Informant handling notes, correspondence with foreign partners, subpoenas, internal emails with the US Attorney's Office about the MPA, and entire folders of photos. I mean, look, if you're trying to restore trust, you don't start by blocking out the index. 2024 to 2025, survivors sue the government, the door swings shut. In 2024, a group of survivors sued the United States, accusing the FBI and DOJ of repeated failures, ignoring early tips, protecting Epstein with the 2008 deal, and sidelining victims ever since. They asked for records and accountability. In 2025, Trump's DOJ and the FBI issued a tidy little memo with a blunt message. There is no incriminating client list, no credible blackmail evidence, no predicate to investigate uncharged third parties, and no further disclosures are warranted. If you wanted closure, that was the end of it. If you wanted answers, it read like deja vu. Victims' lawyers said they'd received no meaningful outreach. Freedom of Information Act responses slid even further into the distance. 2026, then 2027. After everything, decades of warnings, a federally blessed up plea bargain, a second round of charges, raids, a death in custody, the government's answer to the survivors was essentially, trust us. Trump's role, 2 acts and a coda. Trump's Epstein timeline has 2 acts and a backstage coda that matters more than either. Act 1, the gloss. In 2002, Trump told a magazine, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with, and has even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and that many of them are on the younger side." That is his quote, unedited. He said that. Act 2, the pivot. By 2025, Trump called Epstein this creep, waved off questions as partisan noise, and occasionally dangled the idea of releasing names before slamming the door again.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
The performance was familiar. Hint, tease, retreat. The coda is where the power is. Oversight letters say FBI personnel reviewing Epstein files were instructed to flag any documents that mentioned Trump. Inside the building, Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Deputy Director Dan Bongino reportedly fought over the release decisions. Bongino, who had built a bit of a following on promises of Epstein revelations, raged when the department opted against broad disclosures, and he even threatened to quit. Trump also pushed Pam Bondi to unseal grand jury transcripts. Legal experts note that these are secret and heavily redacted, unlikely to reveal much beyond what's already public, while risking new privacy harms for survivors. To put it plainly, the same president who elevated Alexander Acaster, the architect of that NPA, all the way to the cabinet, later used the FBI to control the spotlight. What the chronology shows about the FBI. Let's line the events up, end to end. 1996 to 2005, survivor warnings and banking flags accumulate. A mother's complaint in 2005 triggers a real police case. The FBI opens its own file in 2006 and conducts scores of interviews. 2007 to 2008, a secret federal MPA is negotiated. Victims are kept in the dark. Immunity is extended to co-conspirators. The federal sex trafficking case vanishes. 2009 to 2015, survivors press their rights in court. A judge later agrees they were wronged. The butler who tried to sell evidence goes to prison. Decision makers get promotions. 2019, the Southern District of New York brings new charges. The FBI seizes evidence room by room. The island is raided. Zorro Ranch stays quiet. Epstein dies. 2 guards are charged for falsifying logs. 2024 to 2025, survivors sue the United States. DOJ says there's nothing more to see. FBI reviewers are told to flag the president's name. Freedom of Information Act dates slip into the future. Is this a comedy of errors or a pattern of protection? Regardless of why, at every stage, the Bureau's choices favored the same people. In the 2000s, the deal that saved Epstein also shielded his co-conspirators. In 2019, the loudest raids happened where cameras would roll, while a sprawling ranch stayed seemingly unsearched. In 2025, transparency arrived as a memo that said there was nothing left to find, even as the Bureau told its reviewers to segregate mentions of the president. And threaded throughout this whole thing are the oops moments. Computers allegedly whisked away before a raid, jail cameras that conveniently failed or show nothing, and inventories that kind of never quite line up. This isn't what accountability looks like. That's how power protects itself. This case has honestly never been just about Jeffrey Epstein. It's about how institutions bend to protect the powerful. And honestly, it's still unfolding right now. And every layer we peel back reveals another set of questions. If you made it all the way to the end, you should subscribe because we do 5 videos a week, so make sure that you hit that button and stick around for more. If you like this video or just want a bit more info, get a bit more deep dive going, watch my deep dive on the ranch. It's crazy out there. Seriously. Bye.